The Nether update is one of the most highly anticipated updates in Hypixel Skyblock. The admins have been teasing their release of this update for a very long time now and have recently showed us a picture of the island. The island is so massive, it's bigger than any other island we have seen to date on the game, which is very promising. In today's video, I'll be going over the items you can invest in to make a ton of money off this update. I'll also be going over setups for early, mid, and late game players separately, so you could be as prepared as possible for this update. Feel free to skip around the video, as I will leave timestamps below for you to check it out. Don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe if you want to be up to date on Hypixel Skyblock content. Now on with the video. Alrighty guys, so first I'm going to go over some of the items you should be investing in that have the highest chance of actually being in the update and making you good money. So those are going to be the Blaze Rod, the Slime Drops being the Enchanted Slime Block, and the Enchanted Magma Cream. And then for mining, we're going to have Quartz, and we're going to have Netherrack and Glowstone. So when it comes down to these, obviously the Blaze Rods are very common and popular. They're very high in price because of the Blaze Pet and the Blaze Armor. So obviously these are probably going to do very well in the update releases. However, they are expensive right now, so it is kind of a risk to buy these right now. So that is kind of up to you. I do like the price of Enchanted Magma Cream and Enchanted Slime Blocks. Especially Enchanted Slime Blocks, they're really close to their NPC price. I believe it's 128k per enchanted slime block. So if you buy these now and they go down, you won't be losing that much money. So these two have potential to be in the update because they involve slimes, which the Magma Cube is obviously a part of this area. And who knows, slime blocks have no use, but there is like a bow. So maybe that bow will actually be useful one day. So I think it's worth to buy this since it's so close to NPC price. In regards to the mining items, we do have quartz, which I think will be obvious because of the nether and quartz being in relation to it. There's a high chance to be in the update. Pretty expensive as well, so I would hold off on buying a bunch of this, but if you want to risk it for the biscuit, it's a good option, I think. Glowstone is close to its NPC price as well, and I feel like this might have some sort of use as the update, just because we're in the nether. And the last one being Netherrack. Netherrack has not very many uses, but it's definitely kind of going up in price, and it might be something that potentially could be a flip before the update drops, or it might actually have some use. I'm not entirely sure. But these are the items I would say if you wanted to invest, I would definitely recommend those. Specifically though, I'd recommend these slime items. I think these are really great buys. The other ones are really good as well, but they are a little bit more expensive than I would like. Now we're going to go ahead and talk some other items you invest in that are not necessarily as mainstream or well known. Alrighty guys, I'm going to go over a few more items here that are a little more speculative. They have a really good chance to increase in value, but they could also fall drastically. So let me go ahead and show you guys those. So of course the first one being is Cubism. Cubism is a really good enchant because it actually gives you more damage to slimes and magma cubes. So I think it's a really good one to have if you can afford it, just because I think a lot of people will want it on the day of the update. And any enchant that's tier 6 and tier 7 would actually be really good, such as Sharpness. The reason being is because One For All recently got nerfed. So actually tier 7 enchants and tier 6 are actually better. So if you can grab your hands on some of those and kind of save them for the update, I think you'll do very well. These have a very low chance of going down because everyone's going to want to put it on the new weapons that come out. On top of that, we actually have as well the Magma Cube Pet and the Frozen Blaze Armor and the Frozen Blaze Pet. Those items are pretty standard. I think they will go up, but I don't know how much due to the inflation of how much it's available. So, you can invest in those, but it's a little late, but still a decent option if you don't have anything else to go with. Now, when it comes down to a talisman here, I definitely think the Nether artifact is also super important. It is cheaper than it normally is at 77 mil. I paid about 120 for mine. So it might be a decent buy just because when the update comes out, I have a feeling this will be very useful and you could probably upgrade it throughout the update. So it's something to consider as well if you have the extra coins. Now, also a few items here that I think are way more out of line in regards to the update, but are actually going to be really, really good, I think, and do potentially make you tons of money. Of course, that's going to be here cheese, and on top of that, the catalysts. So the reason why these catalysts I think are going to be really valuable is just because Derpy will be coming out in about 2 months from now, or maybe even less. And I do think that these will spike up a lot in price, and especially with the update, people are going to want to grind minions to get all the new loot and stuff. So I do think hyper catalysts and stuff are a good price. They are a little bit more expensive than I last checked, but I still think it might be a decent buy. I think people will go very crazy, especially because Derpy is coming up, and I think the price tends to go up over time. Now, on top of that, we also have enchanted gold blocks, which I know it sounds very odd, but enchanted gold blocks have been in almost every update as of recently, and I do think that they will actually be used in this update due to the fact that there's zombie pigmen, which means there is a chance that that'll be used as well. And the last one that I want to talk about here, actually a few more, sorry, is the precursor gear. It's really good. Feeding potato books and recoms. All of those are really good to get before the update because as you can see here, they're actually really cheap, especially recoms. These will probably jump up to like 5.8, 5.9 during the update day, just because people want to actually increase their armor, get it to the mythic rarity. So I would definitely consider buying some recoms, especially since they're so close to the 5 million threshold, because it can't go lower than that. Definitely something to consider. Same with fumings and everything like that. And of course, precursor gears are a good price as well. Those things are going to help because people in the update typically try to buy those items and they go up in price. Now, the last one that I want to go over that is really, really speculative, but I think this one could make you a ton of money if you're smart about it, and that's going to be getting a mining setup. The reason why I would say this is because recently mining has been nerfed, and if you go ahead and take a look at like 655 drills, they have gone down significantly in value. As you can see here, here's one for 189 when these used to be worth 400 mil. And the reason why I do that is I'm going to pull up a picture of the map here of the island, and you'll see that there's actually a little section that actually has some sort of like cave system connected, which makes me feel like there's a really good chance that this update could have something to do with mining. So if you're actually ready for that and have a decent mining setup, you may be able to make a ton of money. That is really speculative. There's a low chance that this happens, but if it does and you have the drills are so cheap and you have that, you may be looking really, really good for this update as well. So those are the items I would recommend you actually go for this update. And now I want to go ahead and talk about some early, mid, and late game setups that you guys could use in order to be successful for this update. So let's get on with it, starting with the early game. Alrighty guys, so we're going to be going ahead and talking about the early game setups I recommend for this update. Keep in mind though, this update is definitely made for the more higher tier players in the mid to late game. So you are going to struggle as an early game player, but these are the items I'd recommend even if you're there. Maybe you can get some stuff out of it and it might be some potential. So first, of course, you want to get the Mana Flux Orb. This will help a lot with healing and survivability in the island. On top of that, you want to get the Wand of Healing. They're not too expensive at all. These will definitely give you a little bit more healing as well during the fights and stuff. And when it comes down to armor, you're going to want to get Shadow Assassin if possible. Very good setup, very good armor. If you can't afford this, go for superior armor. This would be another really solid setup to get as well. If you can't afford that, it is expensive, but you know, it's still a good setup. On top of that, you're going to want to get the Livid Dagger. This is a really good sword for you to have as you get the 100% attack speed, which is very, very helpful because you don't have to make your talismans attack speed. So yeah, they're about 7 million. So that's what I'd recommend when it comes down to it. And then for pets, I would say shoot for the whale pet, the Yeti pet, or if you can't afford either of those, try with a skeleton or tiger and lion. But yeah, honestly, if you're in a situation where you can't afford most of this stuff, this update's probably not the greatest when it comes down to it for you, just because it's going to be definitely geared towards more late game players. So keep that in mind. But if you can't do this, I just recommend getting your skills up and kind of focusing on your talismans. The more damage you have, the better for this update. So that's what I would do if you're an early game player. Now on to the mid game. Alright guys, now I'm going to talk about my mid game recommendations for you. And so going by this, I would recommend you either go for Necron or full Frozen Blaze armor. Now Necron is going to be the option if you don't have a Blaze pet. So Necron is a little bit expensive. It's definitely going to cost you a pretty penny, but it's a very versatile set and will actually get you pretty good damage. You do need a floor 7 completion for this, so if you don't have that, I'd recommend Frozen Blaze. But Frozen Blaze I think is a little more expensive at the moment. So that's my recommendation for armor. For weapons, you can go with the Livid Dagger, but my personal preference is the Giant Sword if you can afford it, just because it's 125 right now. It's expensive, but this will allow you to do a lot more damage in this update, and they did say this is more catered towards the end game players, so you want to be as prepared as possible. If you can't afford this, go for the Livid Dagger and you should be okay, but it definitely will be a lot easier with this. Now, if you can afford a Mana Flux, great, but I'd also recommend an Overflux as well, the upgraded version of the Mana Flux, because it does way more healing and it's really strong. If you can't afford this, the Mana Flux is okay as well. And then on top of that, you want to get a Wand of Atonement. They're actually pretty affordable. I do believe like the top one is only a few mil. So yeah, they're like less than 5 mil. So if you want to get one of these help a lot with healing. They give you 170 health per second. which I think is really good, especially if you don't have a plasma flux or a overflux. Very, very good healing weapon for you to run around with as well. Now, when it comes down to pets, of course, go for the blaze pet. If you can't do that, then I would go for turtle, or whale or yeti. If you can't get any of those, then the lion or tiger pet is fine. On top of that, if you want for a little bit extra, you could get a juju short bow. However, I don't know how well bows will be doing in this update. So it did definitely, if you don't, it's not necessarily the best thing to go for. But if you have the extra money and want to get it, it's definitely a solid option. But I do think it's going to be more sword combat's going to be your better advantage for this update. But I could be wrong. So that's what I recommend for mid game. And now we're going to go ahead and talk about late game plus. Alrighty guys, here's my late game and beyond setup for anyone that's late and end game. So of course you guys probably know what you're doing, but I'll go for a quick rundown so you guys can see what I recommend. My main recommendation is 3-Force FB plus Warden Helmet. Warden Helmets are extremely cheap right now because of the recent crash in price through the update. So my thought is to get one of these and have it ready for this update. I do think that it'll be useful, especially as they add more sets to the game. I just think this is the best item outside of dungeons. So make sure you grab one of these if you can, and have your 3-Force FB for armor. Now, if you can't afford this, Necron is also an option, but like I said, FB is probably going to be better for this update, so I would keep that. Now, on top of that, for weapons, I would definitely do a giant sword for your main DPS, with One for All or Tier 7 enchants, your choice. Very, very strong and good weapon, because we don't have a Blaze or Nether Fortress item or weapon that's actually going to be able to be used, because the update's not out yet. So this is generally a good weapon to always start out with and always have. And it's at a really good price. Now, as well as that, we do want to talk about the Terminator. The Terminator is definitely something you could get if you wanted to go ahead and have a ranged weapon for this update. I don't know how useful that'll be, I'll be honest. But if you have a Terminator already or want to buy one, it might be a good thing. It definitely went down in price recently. So something to consider if you're doing that. On top of that, when it comes to healing for this setup, you could get a Hyperion or Scylla. These things are expensive, but if you already have one, very, very useful because the absorption hearts, very, very good for giving you extra hearts so you could survive better. On top of that, of course, we want to go ahead and take a look at the plasma flux if you can afford that. If not, overflux is fine. This thing is really, really good for healing. So definitely recommend getting this. On top of this, for pets, I would use, of course, the Blaze pet, but you could also use G-Drag or E-Drag, Whale, Turtle. There's a lot of options, but probably your best bet is Blaze or G-Drag if you're going to choose one. Lastly, if you have E-Man 7, Term is good, but also getting a gyro might be a really good option as well. The gyrokinetic wand is really, really useful because it essentially allows you to like bring all the mobs together. So you might be able to get them together and kill them all at once. So definitely something to consider. And also for healing, you could also go for the Wand of Atonement and the Gloomlock Grimoire. The Grimoire is really good for burst healing. So I definitely recommend that as well. If you wanted to have a little more healing and you're struggling, definitely not a very expensive either. So yeah, boys, that's all I have for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. PST Skyblock on Twitch and YouTube. So feel free to check me out there. But peace out, gamers.